शेखरे स्मर हरे गंगाधरे शंकरे सर्पैर्भूषितकण्ठकर्णविवरे नेत्रोत्थवैश्वानरे दन्तित्वकृतसुन्दराम्बरधरे त्रैलोक्यसारे हरे मोक्षार्थं कुरु चित्तवृत्तिमखिलाम् अन्यैस्तु किं कर्मभिः चूडोत्तंसितचन्द्रचारुकलिका चञ्चच्छिखा भास्वरो लीलादग्धविलोलकामशलभः श्रेयो दशाग्रे स्फुरन् अन्तःस्फूर्जदपारमोहतिमिर प्राग्भारमुच्चाटयन् चेतःसद्मनि विजयते ज्ञानप्रकाशो हरः उमासहायं परमेश्वरं प्रभुं त्रिलोचनं नीलकण्ठं प्रशान्तं ध्यात्वा मुनिर्गच्छति भूतयोनिं समस्तसाक्षिं तमसः परस्तात्. By the famous mantra Purnamadaha Purnamidam, the Ishavasya Upanishad gives to us a very startling revelation, a mind-blowing vision, whereby all duality is negated. It is said that if only we see the truth, the whole alone remains, the infinite alone is, or in a simpler language, there is truth alone and nothing else. Ordinarily, you and I complain that there is falsehood alone. Where is truth? We are searching for truth. Ordinarily, the situation is just the reverse of what is described here. Everywhere there is fear, there is incompleteness, there is unhappiness, and we are all searching for peace, security, happiness. And the Vedanta says, in right seeing, samyak darshana, in right seeing, purnameva avashishyate. We shall find that there is only truth and nothing else. That is why in the second chapter of Gita, as many of you have studied, there is that very famous but very puzzling shloka. Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagarti sanyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato munehe. Lord Krishna says, what is dark night for everybody else is bright day for the wise person. The wise person is wide awake when all are asleep. And where all are awake, all are keeping their eyes open, and apparently all are excited, very eager to see things, exactly there the wise man goes to sleep. For the wise man or wise lady for that matter, no gender bias, it is all night. So, what is day for everybody else is night to him, and what is night to all is day for him. Pretty much the same way here. For the wise vision, there is Purnam Eva. Purnam Eva Avashishyate. We labored yesterday to show the significance of this mantra, and just in a few sentences to give summary of it, I had highlighted the psychological aspect of our perception of this world. This world has apparently a physical aspect, and then there is a second aspect which is created by our mind. Suppose somebody comes up here with expensive jewelry on her neck. Every one of us would see the jewelry. None of us is blind. The shining gold jewelry with whatever other precious stones, all would see. But would the perception be the same in everybody's mind? Some of us would not think about it. Some of us would say, that seems to be really good. Some of us may even have thoughts, this is exactly the kind of jewelry I wanted to have. I don't know when I will get. Different people have different thoughts. That is the psychological aspect. Everywhere you think of it, not only while seeing objects, but even with respect to the work we do, the role we play, our identity, our position in the society. There is a physical or let's say objective aspect, and then there is a mental or psychological aspect. Any job, if you take, somebody is very happy about that job, proud about that job. Somebody else is looking at that job as very unpleasant, a burden, and so on. In relationships too. Some people look at a child or a spouse, relationships, with so much of joy, considering it such a privilege. We are so blessed to have a daughter like this. Such a feeling also is possible. And somewhere else, it may not be all that pleasant. The very parents who have given birth to the daughter may not have a harmonious relationship. Mothers and daughters are also seen on this very earth to have tremendous friction. Other day in New Delhi, I think, some model or somebody aspiring to be a cinema actress killed her mother, saying that this mother interferes too much in my work. Whatever I try to do, she prevents, and she wants me to do something else, become something else, and so on. And this young lady went to the extent of killing her mother. You think the problem was physical, as God had created? It was more mental. The mind generates all kinds of likes and dislikes, all kinds of pleasurable and painful connotations, interpretations. I am telling you, the plain interpretation of a mantra like this is, if you were to be free of all judgments, you don't have to have a rosy judgment of things, but be free of any judgment. If you were to have a still mind, quiet mind, if you were to have a silent mind, then you will find this very creation to be Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. This creation, this world, this life of ours, as per the rishis, is nothing short of pure bliss. But if you and I are not able to see it that way, it is because our mind is filled with thoughts which are old stuff, which are so mechanical. The moment we something, we say, I know it, which are thus products of memories. So, Purnameva avashishyate, in this way to summarize, is how you and I would perceive this very world through a silent mind, a mind that does not project anything. If you were to not project the snake, what actually there is, the rope, does not cause any fear in you. Therefore, a silent mind perceives this entire universe and the whole of life to be joyous, worthy, and the heart of somebody with such a silent mind has love and love only at all time. Therefore, saints and sages never ask you and me to become doctor or engineer or lawyer or chartered accountant, or they never ask us to go abroad and settle here and there. They never ask us to. No saint talks about those things. The world is always after some of those things. The saints and sages summarize all their teachings to just one word: love. Live in love. Live in such a way that even in your thoughts, nobody is hurt or disturbed. That is the kind of message. For they know that that is where there is fulfillment in life. Then do they mean that you don't need a good house to live in and nice clothes to wear? Do they mean that you don't need a vehicle to move about? The saints and sages know that those things will fall into places. When your heart is filled with love, every one of you has much more than necessary intelligence to collect what is required. The mistake that we do is, in our excitement, or I should say anxiety, to acquire these things of the world, love is lost. The saints and sages say to us, if you have love in heart, nothing would be lost. All of them you would get. Yogakshemam vahamyaham. Sri Krishna puts it in the language of bhakti. If you think of me continuously, steadily, all the time, ananyaha chintayanto mam, right? Then yogakshemam vahamyaham. I will ensure that you will get whatever you need. I will ensure that roti, kapada, makan, and whatever is a long list will all come to you. They will come at your feet. But in our ignorance, in our panic, in our anxiety, we say, God, wait a little, I am coming to you. I am just first trying to get all my needs fulfilled. So we take things in our hands. I believe somebody was praying God, God, give me darshan on a Monday or Tuesday morning. The way he cried, God, in a manner of saying, God said, My God, or God won't say my God. That is you and I. So he must have said just my, oh my. So he came and appeared before this devotee. But the moment he appeared, this fellow, can you believe, looked at his watch and said, God, you came. Can you visit me on weekend? I have to rush to the office now. So sometimes we do a drama only. God knows. That is why he doesn't give darshan so easily. So we put God afterwards when things are taken care of. The saints tell us, no, put God first. Be centered in God or be centered in truth. Take whichever word appeals to you. Be centered in love. Be centered in love, then things will come to you. Now we take up the first mantra, the most celebrated mantra of this Upanishad, or for that matter, of all the Vedas. I said to you yesterday Mahatma Gandhi's words. If just the first mantra remains, we will then revive everything with its help. So please repeat after me. Om Ishavasyamidam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagatyam Jagat Tena Tyaktena Bhunjitha Ma Gridha Kasya Svidhanam. Once more. Om Ishavasyamidam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagatyam Jagat Tena Tyaktena Bhunjitha Ma Gridha Kasya Svidhanam. When we split it into 4 parts, the third part would have a visarga, bunjithaha. But what is printed also is not wrong, for in Sanskrit there is something called sandhi. So when you have bunjithaha followed by ma, that visarga aha drops. Therefore bunjitha ma. So what is printed without that aha is also correct. That is after sandhi, when we split it, bunjitha, that is before sandhi. Sandhi, 2 words come and some change takes place in between. Those who attempted studying Sanskrit grammar know it. I had a Californian student in 1989 in Mumbai. I remember, very eager. These Americans, when they take up something, they are so passionate. This lady from San Francisco, Christina, had landed in Mumbai. And I was assisting Swami Purushottam-Anand-ji in teaching the brahmacharis in Mumbai. And Sanskrit I was teaching for some time. So this Christina was so eager. It was as though she wanted to study everything in 6 months. That spirit, that urgency. And one morning she said to me, can you teach me Sunday rules? I said, Sunday rules? Sanskrit doesn't have separate rules for Sunday and Monday. The rules are the same on all days. No, Sunday rules. Then it occurred to me, Sandhi rules. Sandhi rules. The way she pronounced was, at that time my own grasp of some of these foreign accent or lack of accent was very poor. Now I can figure out a little better. Even now I can't catch when foreigners speak English. English movies, go above the head even now for me. Written, okay. Written I can follow. Otherwise, when they speak, Sandhi rules, not Sunday rules, Sandhi rules. So Bunjitha and Magradaha becomes Bunjitha Magradaha. Ishavasyam idam sarvam. In this mantra, even if we take just this first quarter, it's a very profound and very helpful piece of Vedic revelation for our contemplation. I would say this with great conviction and with honestly great amount of personal insight, that in any of our situations of conflict, when we suffer from some inner turmoil, to reflect on the mantra, even in this little part, Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam, can help us shift our angle of perception, the way we see things. Whenever you and I have conflicts or some kind of misery, if we become a little more attentive, that is, if we become a bit more observant on what is happening to us, if we become a little more aware of the game that thoughts are playing within us, we easily notice. With a little Vedanta training, it becomes easier and easier that, well, thoughts have created a certain picture. As per the picture created by thoughts, I seem to be in terrible danger. Am I actually in danger? Am I really in trouble? I don't know. But right now, my thoughts have made me believe like that. Isha Vasyam is the antidote to such a terrible picture created by thoughts. Thoughts create fear, for example. Thoughts create, what is fear? A prospect of my becoming maybe a big loser, my becoming infamous, my receiving no more love from many people who so far have been loving me. Thoughts create a picture of what could happen to me. Now, number one, such things may not happen. Number two, suppose such things happen also, really speaking, take for example this, if I may use the word, this business of love and being loved. Sorry for using the word business, but I am using it in a very general sense. I am afraid people may not love me. Really speaking, what is important is I have love for everybody. If somebody doesn't love me, it may be one person, it may be 10 people, it may be 100 people. When they don't love me, really speaking, the picture is they are unable to rise above some negativity in them. They are unable to get back what we may call in such a satsang, spiritual health. See, to love is the sign of spiritual health. If somebody doesn't love you, then that person is suffering from spiritual ill health. Oh, that is all philosophy and great theory. But if people don't love me, it's going to be hard for me, you may say. Wait. Don't jump to a conclusion. Should it really be hard? Think. Suppose people don't love you, even as you perceive that, why should you be so impoverished? Why should you be so poor that it is as though you are standing with a begging bowl? Love me, please, please love me. Please say I am good. Please say I am nice. Please say I am marvelous. It is as though you are standing with a begging bowl. That's why I said, why should you be so impoverished? A while ago I talked about the silent mind. If you were to have a mind that is silent, a mind that is free from projections, a mind that does not jump to conclusions or judgments, then you perceive this relation, people not loving you, you are aware of it, and in that silence, logically as well as per the assurance of these great scriptures, in that silence, rather than feeling let down or feeling low or for feeling unfortunate, something different happens. In that silence, you will have compassion. You will have sympathy. You will easily see that this person who is not loving me is suffering from some complex. He is suffering from her or his judgmentalism. That is how saints and sages could walk on this earth, sometimes meeting with so much of criticism, hatred, so much of ill will, but they could see it all with eyes of love. It did not bother them. Many times, criticism from others empowered the saints as though gave them more strength. Therefore, Chinmayanandaji was fond of saying, a successful man is he who collects the bricks that others throw at him and builds a nice foundation. And he made a lot of comments on love. If I may quote one more which seems to be appropriate, Swami Chinmayanandaji used to say, faults become thicker when love becomes thinner. And other way also. Faults become thinner if love becomes thicker. So when you find yourself in a scenario, in a situation where others are not appreciating, others are criticizing you, the fact of the matter is they have an inability to love, and lesser the love, bigger become the faults of the other person. Faults become big when love is thin. When spiritual ill health affects us, we find everything going wrong, we find fault with others. Ishavasyam. What is the meaning of Ishavasyam? I didn't give the word meaning. Vasyam, first in Sanskrit itself, is Achadaniyam. Achadana is covering. What is covering? If I cover the wall with red paint, at the end of it, the whole wall is red. Cover in that sense. Paint the whole wall red. Cover it with red paint. And here, Upanishad's language is a little unusual. Adi Shankaracharya gives the analogy in his Bhashyam commentary. The sense of covering, sense of seeing that something goes everywhere, something is spread everywhere, is like this. You have a piece of sandalwood, and sandalwood is fragrant. Anywhere you were to just take your nose near, it smells so good, perfume is great. However, if this piece of sandalwood comes in contact with water, somehow it was kept at somewhere where there is a lot of humidity, slowly a certain layer, a mossy layer can grow on the piece of sandalwood. And over a length of time, that whole piece of sandalwood can have a bad odor at all. And having eliminated that extraneous layer, that's something which did not belong there actually. These words are important. I am saying these words deliberately, a layer of some stuff, some substance that doesn't belong to the piece of sandalwood. By removing it, you restore to the piece of sandalwood its original fragrance. And in a manner of saying, this piece of sandalwood is now covered from one end to the other, from top to bottom, on all sides of it, it's covered with fragrance. Anywhere you see, anywhere you touch, you held that sandalwood and then left it, then smell your own hand, there is the perfume of sandalwood. That is Vasyam, Achadaniyam. Isha Vasyam. In that way, cover the whole universe, cover everything outside and inside, top and bottom, in all the 10 directions. Cover it all with God. The first word here, Isha, literally means by God. In Sanskrit, for those who are interested in the grammar part of it, there is a word eat, and that is eat, Ishau, Ishaha. Then Isham, Ishau, Ishaha, and then what we call the third case, Tritiya Vibhakti, is Isha. A simpler form of it would be Ishwarena, but that is another word. Ishwara Shabda is separate, eat word is separate. Isha is by God. By God, cover this universe. You know gold plating. Here Ishavasya is asking us to God plate. But God plating or gold plating is, only a thin layer on top. Inside it is something else. But here it is, therefore Shankaracharya's example is more appropriate. The universe, outside and inside, is God, is divine, and like the example went, a layer of moss came up, that also got rotten, and then a foul smell came. Now you may ask, sir, what is the foul layer here in this case? What is to be removed by rubbing, by nigharshana? Acharya Shankara writes in his commentary, kartritva bhoktritva rupam. Sense of I, me, my, I am the doer, I am the enjoyer, I am the sufferer. I lost, I did so much for him, but he doesn't care now for me. I was mentioning a while ago about turmoil, conflict, friction, misery. All of us get hit by it. I sometimes, early morning, when I get up for a little while, suddenly get a certain kind of, discomfort. Like anybody else, I too have varieties of emotions at different times, but I am giving you one simple example. It's very peculiar. My psychology is like that. Whole day I am going here and there and spending time, like as the old idiom goes, water. Nowadays water also is precious. In olden days, my mother used to write to me when I was in college, Beta, don't waste money, don't spend it like water. Water was supposed to be, you can spend any amount of water. So during the day I spend time pretty much freely. But morning I suddenly become conscious of, there is so much work to do, my God, and so on. And a slight amount of tension, not much. It is nothing but created by thought. Vedanta has helped me see that it is, a projection by thoughts. It is certain conditionings. Perhaps there is no need to give too many examples. Let me once more just say, whenever you see something and you feel some panic, something else you say, desire, something else you see, somebody you see, whatever, some emotion rises. Take it from me, It is all the result of some kind of programming that has gone into you. And all of us have a whole lot of programming. We don't have a silent mind. We don't have an empty mind. Our mind is all stuffed. Lot of, in psychology perhaps you call it the unconscious. Then there is the subconscious. And there is the conscious mind. So the fear in the conscious mind on some occasion, on some other occasion, great amount of desire. And again, sometimes it is stirred by or provoked by an object in front of you. Like you see some jewelry and some emotions may arise. Sometimes there is no object at all. It is purely by memories rising in you. Vedanta asks you, kya farak? Either way, the unconscious is stirred. Sometimes you may daydream of acquiring something, buying something, becoming somebody. Sometimes you may daydream. Daydreaming typically is where you see some pleasurable prospects and it's enjoyable. Some other times you may see painful prospects and shudder at its thought. All these are workings of, number one, thought. And how does thought as mind, why does thought do it? Number two, it is the memories. So much is stuffed inside us. And the Vedanta touches upon it saying, the sum and substance of it all is, there is the formation of kartrutva and bhoktrutva, sense of doership, sense of enjoyership. This is a technical pair of words. This pair of words defines or identifies what we call the ego. Some teachers like Krishnamurti, I don't know why, avoid the word ego. They extensively use the word self, the small s, not the capital self of the Upanishads or Atma, no, not that, self. He often urged people to keep an eye on the movement of the self. That's a very nice expression indeed. The language of Krishnamurti has its own beautiful, flavor. Watch the movement of the self. What is meant is, the ego in you has its own movement. Movement meaning sometimes the ego out of nowhere brings you pleasure also. Some other time it gives you out of nowhere again, unnecessarily pain. Like I confessed, sometimes in the morning hours typically, I get tensed up thinking of so much pending work. It lasts for 10 minutes. I just suffer a little, don't do anything about it. Then till next morning I don't do anything about it. The pending work meanwhile increases. The list of things to do, like Hanuman's tale, a few more files to clear, things to write, things to check, things to compile, emails to reply. All these small things, nothing big. What samsara do I have compared with what many of you have? Hardly any responsibility. I am openly saying I am irresponsible. No, it's not irresponsible. No responsibilities. But in my little world, in the little world of a Swami, I have my own tensions. So, what is happening is, thoughts rise, I must do it. I did not do it. I should have done it 10 days back. Last date has come. And what will people say now? How will I show my face to him or her? Now the phone call will come. Something like that. One more email will come. Something like that, So all of you, in your own settings, I'm sure, go through this. The rest of it is details, Rest of it is details. Somebody is into some business of crores of rupees. So whether that businessman is worried about crores of rupees being lost or gained, or somebody among us, some simple person, worried about whether I locked my house today or not while coming to satsang. There is nothing much in the house anyhow. Kabhi kabhi aisa hai. Nothing much in. Well, the panic is the same. You suddenly feel some kind of congestion in the chest. That is why Vedanta calls our life, like a dream and says, wake up. For 1 ounce of real problem, if at all there is any real problem, let us grant there is some real problem. Rishis question it. They sometimes say, which is difficult for us to swallow, that there is no problem at all. That is a bit too much for us to swallow. So let us use a bit concessional language. For 1 ounce of real problem, there are pounds and pounds of thought-created projections. And the core of all this is the sense of doership and enjoyership. And as Adi Shankara writes, that is the foul-smelling layer. And the friction, the rubbing, the process of cleaning it is nothing else than the satsang, which, like now you and I are doing. We apply our thought, we apply our mind to this revelation. Oh, really? Whenever I am feeling low or tense, is it really working of just thoughts, memories? Is it an illusion? We apply our thought. And in this application, a certain friction takes place. Our old habits, where, as we explained, we would get panicky or afraid and so on, come in friction with this proposition by the Upanishad that you are fine, you are all right, you are most lovable, never mind. But I have made a mistake. Go confess, go apologize, seek the forgiveness of somebody to whom you caused some hurt. The Vedanta, is not in the sense of letting you just scot-free and, because I have been saying, no matter what, you may be sick, you may have financial loss, you may have relationship problems. Vedanta declares, you are okay now. What does it mean? It does not mean that you come out and say, I never did any mistake, and rather, you are okay now in the sense, you will have no difficulty in coming to terms with your life. I am sick and I have no conflict about it. Yes, I stole something, I deceived her of some money, I told a lie to him. Now, if the Vedanta, touches me, what I do is, I am not going to say, I never told a lie, I am Brahman. So how can Brahman tell a lie? And that is all twisting and turning. No, it's not like that. When Vedanta touches, that is what happens when bhakti touches you and you break down in love of God. Tears will roll down your cheeks and you will go and say to that man, sorry, I told you a lie all these days, but this is what I am. Do whatever you like. You put your cards open. You put your cards before others without hiding anything. Vedanta will give you all the strength to be transparent, to be open, to live life in that openness. You don't have to take a drum and beat the drum and stand in the middle of the town and tell everybody. That is unnecessary. But in where it is relevant, or sometimes you may not go actually to somebody and apologize, but you will be filled with the sense of apology. If that person were to come before you, you are ready to say too. Those are details. But otherwise, when we are caught in the egoistic, picture, many times others don't care for your apology. In fact, they have forgiven you. They don't, but you have your own complications. And so on. You become breathless. And when the other person comes in front of you, he is not thinking at all about whatever little you did to him. Immediately you, how are you? And so on. So much acting, and in your privacy, so much suffering. So many things you and I do. This is the story of Mr. or Miss or Mrs. Ego. The ego is like that. In the BMI chart of Swami Chinmayananji, he used to say, everyone is Om, pure Satchit. But alas, identifying with body, mind and intellect, BMI, everybody becomes perceiver, feeler, thinker. Many of you have studied this BMI chart. And why I quote that is, he used to say, the glorious Om gets reduced to the poor PFT. Poor, perceiver, feeler, thinker. That's the word for ego. As the ego, you become so poor, you shrink. I used the word a while ago, you get impoverished. You actually are the glorious existence awareness, but succumbing, yielding, letting thoughts overpower you more and more, letting this memory machine to trap you more and more, you become so small. And pretending like this, pretending like that, living double life or triple life, having many faces to show to the society, your psychological life is more complicated than ever. Right? Bring a sandpaper. Sandpaper and rub. Take the piece of sandalwood, upside, below, side, left side, back side, front side, without leaving even 1 square millimeter, completely rub the piece of sandalwood, as Adi Shankara says. Let the fragrance of the sandalwood emanate, come out of every bit of that piece of sandalwood. You are the sandalwood here. You are that fragrant, you are that divine reality. But thoughts have created this sense of ego, sense of self. The self has its own movement. Watching the movement of the self, through that watching, through that intense watching, the friction, the rubbing is bound to take place. You have so much time to watch the television, most of the time mechanically, just sitting before. Most of the time watching those repeated advertisements. So terrible. Some of the advertisements, they come every 3 minutes. It is cruel actually. They should have a legislation against frequency, of same advertisement coming every 3 minutes in some channels should be banned by legislation, I would say. Bombarding you for a little of entertainment or educative stuff that you want to watch. They bombard you with the same thing, and you cannot even turn away because you don't know when it ends and the actual program begins. You don't want to miss one line of the serial. That serial is a mirror to your own complications anyhow. Your life also is complicated. There also there is some fight and you are very eager. Now what happens? and you are hoping that I may get a clue there how I should face my enemy tomorrow. Instead of watching that, or instead of reading books, shut the television, shut the book also. Sit and sit quietly. The day you begin to sit quietly, you have reached a milestone in spiritual sadhana. So far, spirituality also for you might have been listen to some tape, turn on some CD, open some book, chant something, or go and attend some class. Good, but don't stop there. No class, no book, no CD, no tape, no mumbo jumbo, no ritual. Just sit straight. If you want, take a back rest and just face yourself. Through the class, through the book, through the CD, through the tape, through 100 things, you are running away from yourself. The thief to be caught is right within you, the ego. Then the friction takes place. Then that nigarshana takes place. Ishavasyam idam sarvam. Then, as the ego, through this rubbing, through this friction goes away, you will find that God alone is outside and inside. What do we mean by God? The conflict-free awareness is God. Sanatana Dharma, no doubt, describes God as Ram, as Krishna, as Shiva, as... I also began today with 3 shlokas on Lord Shiva. Chandrodbhasita Shekaram, Smaraharam, and all that. Having the crescent moon on his head, the destroyer of Madan, and so on. Yes, but this very Sanatana Dharma, of which Upanishads are the final word, finally describes God as Sat and Chit, or Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. Rest of it is contextual, that is, as per some context. In some specific context, yes, that Sat Chit becomes Rama. In some other context, that Sat Chit becomes Krishna. Banke Bihari of Vrindavan, or Srinathji of Nathdwara, or Guru Ayurappan in the south, the Sat Chit. That is Isha. That Sat Chit pervades. It is outside and inside. Yat kincha jagatyam jagat. Whatever is in this world. Jagatyam means on this earth. Jagat means whatever is moving. Moving, by context, whatever is unmoving also. The rivers that move and the hills that do not are all Ishvara. Ishavasyam idam sarvam. The hill is God, the river is God. The person who doesn't love you is also God. How? When you are able to forgive him, when you are able to look at him with compassion, with sympathy, then the truth of the Upanishad will not be hard for you to realize. When you had difficulty in accepting him, then that is, how is he God? But when you accept him, when you see him with eyes of love, he is God. You yourself are God. This is a very powerful mantra. 8 days we could dwell on this only, for there is so much more to dig and, take out, appreciate. Take the second part now. Tena tyaktena bhunjitaha. Even as you realize that this self, this ego is false. My fear is false. My worry is false. My anxiety is false. That is the first line, Ishavasyam. When in your quiet contemplation, in your own personal insights, assisted or facilitated by the Upanishads, when you see that, I am fine as I am. If I have made mistakes, I am not anymore in conflict with it. Like any human being, I too made mistakes. I am ready to apologize if need be. See, that is the spirit. I have no conflict with it. I have nothing to hide. Life is an open book. So when you come to that inner clarity, that inner cleansing, then that becomes a tyaga. Tena tyaktena. Here tyaktena, there is a little grammar here, boils down to tena tyagena. By that renunciation, you said, what renunciation? Where did we talk about giving up? The first line doesn't talk about giving up. So there is a little involved explanation. In this realization of who you are bound to give up number of your attachments. When you are living in the self-created prison of ego, you are holding on to so many things. Money and power and position and title and, I want to be in the good book of him and good book of her, and I am very touchy about what she talked about me and what he said about me. Somebody says to me, the other day in that marriage party, so and so was talking about you, and I didn't like what they said about you. In our egoistic way of living, we get very concerned. What did he say? And when we are told that in that marriage they were talking that you had once taken 1 lakh rupees from them and you never returned, now you don't even admit that you had taken. Really? You want to be talked well of. You don't want any negative comment about. So you cling to your image above all. See, money and power, etc., all of them together finally come to your image. You cling to your image. The traditional explanation is attachment to son, attachment to wealth, putraishana, vittaishana, lokaishana, attachment to name and fame, tyaktena, tyagena. Once you have a clarity of who you are, I am not this ego, I am not a doer or enjoyer, then who am I? The answer to that is a mystical answer. I am, full stop. There is no description. The silent mind does not cling to any answer at all. I am. The moment you say I am this or I am that, troubles begin. It will come more, please bear with me. This self-knowledge is very unique. The silent mind does not keep any label on itself. Only specific to some context, you are a father, you are a mother, you are a wife, you are brother, you are sister. And all contexts, all situations put together is only 1% of life. 99% of your life, there is no context at all. Suppose you are going for a walk. Are you father at that time? See, philosophically. Now you may say, what do you mean? I am 24 hours father. That is your attachment, But otherwise, you are walking. Well, you are just maybe a citizen, you may say. That also is not necessary. It is said that Krishnamurti used to take a walk and he would have no thoughts in his mind. Try taking a walk with no thoughts. When you and I walk, a million thoughts arise. One moment we think of our role as father. Another moment we think of our role as son. Third moment, by the time we are for the third round in maybe walking, we are thinking of yet another role. I as the lender, as the debtor, or some setting, or thoughts are continuously projecting us as so and so, such and such, as this, as that. We are under the tyranny of thoughts. And we have let it happen all along. And if you watch more television, the tyranny will become more. Whereas if you watch your own thoughts and see kya ho raha hai, then this tyranny will become less. You are not, there is a word, right? Niga rakhna. Is there a word like that? Niga rakhna, niga karna. To keep an eye. So keep an eye on your thought parade, it will reduce. But you have no time for that. Because you grab a magazine, you grab a newspaper, you grab something or the other. In a way, it is pathetic that now, in the name of prosperity and in the name of greater convenience, even on aeroplanes, multiple channels, what you call personalized entertainment, even during travel. And now everybody has this. Mobile is an old story. Now everybody has MP3 players. You travel on a train, especially these youngsters, they're all into in their own world they are. Everybody is with some MP3 player. One small thing and they change. 6 travelers are there in, let's say, in a compartment. All 6 of them, or something like 4 of them are glued to this MP3 player. They are listening to something. What about listening to the movement of the self? Self is the ego. Watch your fear, watch your desire. Suppose a rosy imagination rises. It happens to us, right? When sometimes we are traveling, that also comes. Some rosy imagination. We start thinking, oh, I do this, then that can happen, oh, then I will get very rich. Or then I will become very famous. Or then I will have so much pleasure within my access. Something like that we can visualize. Usamai also, even that time, you could watch that whole process. In that watching, the power of thought reduces. See, it is as simple as this. More you assert, this with the limitation of language, more you assert your nature as awareness, less will be the grip of thoughts on you. But if you think that you are a thinker, you are a feeler, perceiver, feeler, thinker, you don't question it at all, then you are taking yourself to be a thinker and feeler and not awareness, will keep you in that field of thought. You are in the grip of that. Tena tyaktena bhunjithaha. The word bhunjitaha here means, that is Sanskrit again, it is nothing to do with bhoga, bhuj, bhukti. Elsewhere is to eat, to enjoy. But here the word bhunjitaha means palayetaha, protect yourself. The moment you abandon your stature or status as ego, I am not doer or enjoyer, this way you abandon tyaga, then you have saved yourself, you have protected yourself. The Upanishad wants us to do it. Just the reverse of normally what we think. Normally, usually every one of us thinks that by becoming somebody, by becoming a politician maybe, by becoming the richest person, by becoming some very well-known person, by becoming somebody, we will be safe. We look at security, usually, in the worldly thinking it's like that. Security is by becoming somebody, and we shudder to think of becoming nobody. The Vedanta Of course, you have to understand it in the right spirit. It doesn't mean behave irresponsibly and squander away your money or all that, not that way. You have to understand it rightly. It is in the psychological domain. Inside you, when you, as the word came, tyaktena, tyagena, when you let go of your attachment to the image, the image of being powerful, rich, etc., that's a grosser thing. Even the image of, I am the one whom everybody loves, everybody admires, I am the one whom everybody respects, I am the one who is looked at in this way. This is psychological image. You let go of your attachment to this kind of image, then you know what bunjitaha means. In what way have you protected yourself? Not from physical assaults or dakus or luteras or all those grosser things. You have protected yourself once for all from any possible hurt. You will never be hurt. Nobody can hurt you. By this abandoning of I, me and my, when you arrive at this simplicity of heart, when you arrive at this childlike innocence, which we called a while ago the silent mind, the empty mind, the quiet mind, the still mind. When you arrive at this stillness, nothing can hurt you. Your so-called near and dear ones letting you down will not hurt you. At most, you will have some tears flowing down from your eyes out of sympathy. Is that what my own son says these days? You will have great sympathy. Because in life, our own son, our own daughter, our own son-in-law, daughter-in-law, our own grandchild, or for gurus like us, our own so-called disciples, our own life is the same. What we call our own. And we invest a lot of our emotional energy in them. And then one fine morning, they outsmart us. They call us names. One fine morning, they say, Papa, enough is enough. You say that you did so much for me, but I am telling you, it is because of you that I never grew. Such things happen. Don't tell me it is ghar ghar ki kahani. Our youngsters do to us, and we did to our older people also. Ghar ki murgi gadal barabar, right? So every son, daughter at some point begins to think, my parents never allowed me to grow. In the name of love, they suffocated me. Freedom bhi nahi diya. They never gave me space, They cry before their friends or somewhere else. Whereas look at that family, though they are much poorer, there is love in that family. In my family, we are rich, but there is no love. Some theories the son or the daughter or whoever, these youngsters spin. They have their own grievances. And when we come to know, Mera beta aise kah raha hai. My son is saying this. My daughter, my gudiya, meri gudiya aise kah rahi hai. Then we feel sad. Gurus also, the half-baked gurus. Otherwise, no. Real guru, he is empty. I am talking, the so-called guru. Suppose some so-called teacher is not very ripe, just gives lectures but has no maturity really. Then if some disciple leaves and goes, इतना प्यार से पढ़ाया, उपनिषद सिखाया उसको, अभी अलग हो गया वो. That means that the so-called guru hasn't understood what he taught. But that's the reality. See, we should not be too idealistic. In real life, you see, people like me may teach Vedanta, we may explain very well. But we may not be free from these problems. We also have our own attachments. First day there are 50, second day 25, third day 10, and fourth day Ishavasya there are only 5 people. Fifth day only my cooperator, let us say. Swami Chidananda will be very miserable. I am joking, I am as well as telling you the truth also. It's not. Is it easy to, go about doing some work saying that maybe some are more attached to it, this image business, some are less attached. Swami Chidananda may be less worried because of, I don't know, because of wisdom or because of, he is not interested maybe in much of this role. Sometimes wo bhi hota hai. You don't know whether it is detachment. Sometimes because your concern is something else. If you are not bothered, anyway, let me not go into it more. The idea is, when we are attached to an image, when we live in the sphere of expectations, my son, my student, my daughter, my wife, these people should treat me in this way, etc., etc. This is the normal psychological life of everybody. Then, by that way of living, where there is no tyaga, apparently, superficially, there is a lot of tyaga. Every father claims, how much I did for my 2 sons and 1 daughter? How much I did? Do they know? I sacrificed. Every father, every mother says. It is true also. They have sweated a lot. But Upanishad is talking on another level. Did you sacrifice the very sense of self? In other words, did you do all those things with no expectation at all? That is hard for any of us, because anything we do, we have expectations. That is life. We have all been conditioned like that. Whenever we do something, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly. Sometimes openly we expect. We do a service to somebody, openly we give a bill. Ye mera charges hai. Some other time, oh no, don't do it. And suppose that person takes all the services and thank you and goes away, then we grind our teeth. I did so much for him, he did not give me anything, Just one big thank you and went away. Then you say to me, but sir, you said to him, I don't expect anything. Yeah, I said to him, I don't expect anything. But you are also talking like that. You get angry with this person also. Just think in your life, do you do anything with no expectation of any kind, gross or subtle? Not expecting praise also, not expecting, some compliments. Materially you may not expect, but generally you expect something in another way, that they should go somewhere and say, he did so much for us and he did not ask for anything, and that report should come to you next day. Right. Yeah, that, I am like that. I don't expect anything. He is right, like that. So we want some word to spread, that here is a man or a woman who does things without expecting. So when we expect that people talk of our vairagya, then where is vairagya? It is like a contradiction in terms. It is if a sadhu sitting in Himalaya says, I don't want, I given up everything. But the sad thing is, people at my native place, they don't recognize it. What is sad about it? You have gone to Himalayas and somebody from deep south goes thousands of miles and goes to Himalayas. From Kanyakumari, this sadhu has gone, sitting in Rishikesh, meditating. But once in a while sobs. I have given up everything, but back home I got a report that they are saying that I ran away. How sad. What is there to be sad? You give up means you don't think about it now. But ऐसा आसान नहीं है. If the sadhu sitting, I'm talking of ordinary mind, okay, the great real, Swami Tapovanam, and there are some great saints who are different. But an ordinary mind goes to Himalayas and you get a report that I just now had been to Kanyakumari, your family people they are not saying that you have become a sadhu, they are saying you have escaped, run away. And how many people go in Himalayas actually just ignore it? Very few. It hurts. You and I get hurt by a comment, a passing comment. So what is Bunjitaha? In the true renunciation, in the true watching and then shedding expectations, in the true Nigharshana, rubbing and eliminating the foul smell of Kartatva and Bhoktritva, you arrive at that true state of silence in which nothing can hurt you. Protect yourself by this renunciation. That's the literal translation. The significance has to be understood by reflecting a lot on it. How does renunciation protect you? Ordinarily, by acquiring, we protect ourselves. That is a different level, grosser level. Even politicians have, right? All VIPs have different grades of security, different grades. Nowadays, you find people going with what you call them, commandos. It is called? Z plus. Correct, Z plus security. So ordinarily the idea is you protect yourself by arming yourself, equipping yourself, by becoming somebody. That's a totally different context, and it's not in the psychological domain. Here they are talking about being free from any possible hurt. You and I join spiritual organizations, we are into some satsang groups and so on. There also we get hurt. How? Because there also we carry the same thing of expecting. We offer our services, and we are made a member of some committee. And then whoever, the guru or somebody, they just say, thank you very much, you have served very well, we thank you. But in the new committee being formed, we are putting some younger members. People get very offended. I tell you, once in Mysore, a certain satsang committee means, secretary, president, this, etc. That was restructured. And literally some very old people, 88 years old members were there in that. They were relieved. But one of them was so upset, he came with such emotions to Swamiji, who restructured it. And the words he used were, what wrong have I committed to be removed from this committee? And the Swamiji said, you have not committed any wrong. We just put some new younger people now, because you have done a lot of service. Last 10 years you have been in the committee. No, please don't remove me, because people are thinking that I have made a mistake. There is this misunderstanding in people. So he is pointing to people. I have no problem. I am not attached. See, a person who is attached never admits that he is attached. I am not attached to any position. But just keep me. I may not live long, but before I die, why this insult to me? Just he wants to be in the committee. And we say he, that he is in every one of us. We want to be somebody. And the Upanishad talks of such intensity of watching, of being aware. If we are intensely aware, am I attached to an image? Am I attached to a certain comfort? Am I attached to some convenience, some shortcut that somehow I have got? See, we get attached everywhere. Suppose you go to some famous temple where it's all the rush, and the management there once, twice, third time give you a shortcut. Oh, come, you don't have to stand in queue. And they take you. And fourth time they say, or they don't see you at all. Fourth time, you then say, Panditji, I have come. Hari Om. And the Panditji is busy. He ignores you. How many of you can avoid being hurt? Because by 3 times they give you some special attention, give you a shortcut. When 1,000 people were waiting in line, you were taken inside. And fourth time, nothing, they didn't do anything wrong. They just did not give you that facility which was given to you on earlier occasions. You boil. You start saying that this Pandit, what happened to him, I have to find out. He was good. All your energy will go on the Pandit, you forget God totally. Earlier also you did not bother much about God anyhow. Your intention was to do that ritual. Gaya darshan ho gaya, वापस आ गया. क्या लाना है प्रसाद ले आया. बांट दिया परिवार. You and I have such an approach towards holy places also anyhow. But leave it aside. We get attached to comfort, to convenience, to privileges, to being somebody special. And that is the reason, see, whole point here is, that is how we get hurt. We don't have that openness. If I enjoy privileges, fine. If tomorrow privileges are taken away from me, fine. I am a human being. Like billions of human beings, I too am one. And I don't want any special privileges. Of course, you want fresh air to breathe, those are different things. Spiritual wisdom doesn't bring you to the point saying, I don't want clean water to drink. That is not the point. But these special privileges, you are made special. And there are people to work for you. You can stretch your legs and relax. Suppose you get attached to that, then know for sure spirituality has gone out of windows. Then there is no tyaga. And nobody else is in trouble. You are in trouble. When you have no tyaga, then you are in for hurt. You are hurt. Very, very senior, retired IAS officers and such people are seen in the society. I don't mean to corner any particular kind of professionals, but as just an example. They are such eminent people, remarkable people. But after some years of heading maybe some temple committee or some trust or some this or that, for some reason, sometimes their own son or son-in-law removes their name from that management. Their own son or son-in-law. They live in tremendous amount of hurt. I have come across 1 or 2 cases. They go on day and night, they say, why did my son do this to me? Why have they removed me from that such and such, Because they get so attached to being at the helm of affairs. I am the chairperson. And till I don't want to die, but apparently there is no choice till I die. So, please see the psychological significance of this. Tena tyaktena bhunjitaha, and last part of the first mantra, ma agrudaha kasya svidhanam. Therefore, as per your role, play out your role, do your work, and you see, while you play your role, life is full of giving and taking. If you are the secretary, manager, managing director, chairman, you are senior engineer or senior accountant, you see, all of us at different points of life, points of time in life, we have some positions. And we play that role. There are advantages, there are limitations, there are powers to exercise, there are limitations of those powers. You don't have to fight shy of those. That is, you don't have to have any conflict about it. I am just a human being, why should I sit on this big chair? No, you are the chairman, sit there. Take that chair. But the point is, tomorrow you retire, then say goodbye to that chair without looking back. So, you play your role, but deep in your heart, even before retirement, even as every day you go sit on that grand chair and you sign documents, you sign checks, you sign orders, you execute varieties of things, the wisdom of the Vedanta tells you, deep in your heart, know that nothing belongs to you, it's all God's. Isha-vasyam. This chair belongs to Him. These powers belong to Him. This is the sweet bhakti language. Otherwise, in the pure jnana language, wisdom, language of wisdom, there is no self that lays its hands upon this chair, these powers, as these are mine forever. There is no me at all. You see? There is no me, no self. This is pure jnana language. If the language of jnana is a bit abstract, you say it's difficult to conceive a kind of what you call the state of consciousness where there is no self. This absence of the self, absence of I, very difficult to conceive. Then a lot of people find it sweet as well as somewhat easy to bring the sense of God. God is the owner of everything. We are, for a while, entrusted with it. God entrusts a certain power, certain position, certain privileges. Says, drive this, run this. Please run this show. And when I ask you, get up and leave. Somebody else will run it, which I shall gladly do. God's will be done. Thy will be done, not mine. That spirit. That is the tyaga. That is when you will never be hurt. Come what may, the state of love will not be disturbed. With position or without position. With label or without label. With powers or without powers. You are able to love, and if people don't love you, you are able to see that with no hurt. You are able to receive them or perceive them with love and compassion, with forgiveness. It's a glorious state. The ordinary state of mind where everywhere you keep account. I did so much, therefore they should respect me, and if they don't respect me, I will teach them a lesson, and that warfare and all that. There may be some glory about it compared with cowardice. There are cowards on this earth, who go on compromising, who live in fear, who are always afraid of X and Y, who are afraid of somebody's threat. Somebody says, I'll break your bones. Please don't do, I will do anything for you. Compared with that cowardly living, yeah, you say, you break my bones, I'll break your head. All that, Rajasic, that may have its own glory, we don't deny. But the Upanishadic context is of an entirely different level, where anybody threatening you, you look at him with compassion. You want to beat me? Please do. That kind of, because you look at him as your own brother. You don't look at him as somebody else. That division, he is of another community, he is of another country, he is of another linguistic group, he is of another professional group. What another? He and you are one. So this is of a different order. Therefore, the last part of this mantra says, Ma gridaha, don't covet or don't seek, don't run after, don't try to grab this advantage or that benefit or this privilege. This doesn't mean don't own a house. What it means, see, again and again, please see the psychological domain. In your mind, do not gloat over or do not indulge in the sense of ownership, that pride, To own a house with documents, with legal documents, with this and that, is one thing. But it is quite another to come to some conclusions on that basis. I, at this young age have come to own such a big house. In my family, my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, none of them had their own house at all. I am the first one. This is called psychology. About our success and about our failure, when we psychologically register pride, hurt, shame, guilt, sense of superiority, sense of inferiority, this is all what is referred to in the Upanishad. The rest of it, depending on the role you are playing, depending on what God only has blessed you with. God blesses some of you with lot of wealth, and you go about it in an orderly way rather than in an irresponsible way. You see the legal side of it, accounting side of it, you see that everything is in order. Some things are in your name, some things in your wife's name, some things in your son's name. All that you do. Upanishad has no difficulty with that. Ma gridaha doesn't mean, it's not like a communist philosophy. It's not any that kind of external, superficial thing. The message of the Upanishads is for you deep in your heart. You may have lots of property, or you may have only a little house, that too on rent, not owned. Irrespective of that, your heart is free. For this, never mind, tomorrow we will speed up a little. All roads lead to Om. That is a liberal translation of Ishavasyam idam sarvam. All belong to God. Everything is divine. The idea, I am poor, I am weak, I am a sinner, I am very impure person, etc., is false. No. God dwells in me. God dwells in me is the revelation. If you apply your mind to the Vedanta more and more, if you see the truth of it, that whole confusion of your looking down at yourself will go away. You will experience divinity in you, unconditionally. In the same way, other people. He is crook or she is wicked or they are ungrateful and these people are criminals, and these negative ideas about people, about things outside, that is ignorance. All roads lead to Om, meaning outside and inside, others and we. All have God in us. God pervades us all. This understanding is to be gained by removing false notions. Rub the piece of sandalwood, remove the foul-smelling layer that has come upon it, and rediscover the piece of sandalwood in its original fragrant form. That's the analogy. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.